Thanks everyone for joining today. Supported home has been a massive change. It's been a massive change for all of you, for our clients. It has also been a massive change for, just one moment, just admit one more person. It's been a massive change for all of you as our clients, and also, it's a massive change for providers as well, in terms of how we're interacting both with you and also with how we interact with the department. So I'd have to say there's been, quite a few challenges along the way, but hopefully things are getting a little bit smoother. So as I said just a moment ago, today's really about a bit of a recap on support at home, some questions that we're commonly being asked. I'll answer those, and then there's going to be some time at the end for anyone who's got additional questions that I haven't already covered off. Now, I will just let everyone know that I'm planning recording today's session because there have been, a number of people who are unable to attend but are keen to actually watch the recording. So the recording has been switched on. So just a quick recap, which everyone's pretty across this. But in terms of, the supported home program, why was it introduced? The goal, now whether the goal's being achieved at this point or not is yet to be seen, but the goal was really to improve access to services to enable people to remain at home for longer. So supported home obviously kicked off on the 1st of November. It still sort of feels pretty new, I've got to say, with lots of things sort of still changing as we go. The plan from the department is that the Commonwealth Home Support Program will transition in no earlier than July 2027. I think the reality is it's probably going to be further delayed. There's lots of things they're still working through with the current, the current system. So I think that's a bit of a watch this space. But for all of you, you're obviously already in the support at home program, so it doesn't really impact you terribly much. Now, what's going on? It's not changing slides. Okay. So in terms of, the core changes to the system, so the funding classifications have changed. And look, I would say that that's an improvement in the system, in that there are now, 8 classifications, so more gradation of funding amounts. Theoretically, the assessors are better able to match clients' needs to funding amounts. Now, the flip side of that, as I'm sure many of you may have heard, the assessment process, which was intended to be, an integrated process, so it is integrated, but one of the challenges right now with the assessment process is that they are using an algorithm, and the assessors have no ability to override the algorithm. So there are some horror stories that we're hearing where people are being assessed and the algorithm is actually spitting out a classification that's lower than the funding that they currently have in place. Now, no one is being pulled back to a lower level of funding, but the challenge is that, in those circumstances, the reason why the assessment is taking place is because it's been identified that additional funding is required, and the assessment algorithm is actually not supporting that. So that is a bit of a problem. My understanding is that it was never designed to be run on an algorithm. However, that's what's happening at the moment. So I don't have any updates about whether that's going to change. I guess the key message around the assessment process is that it won't be as easy in the immediate term to get increased funding as compared to in the old system, because it is running off an algorithm, and there's not a lot of insight around what are the things that are driving that. I think the higher levels now, like classification 8, you need to be sort of hoist transfers, like it's pretty high level. So, more funding available, but maybe a little more difficult to actually access that, I guess, is the key message. Budgets have been we've moved from monthly budgets to quarterly budgets. Now, I think there's, again, good and bad with that. The quarterly budget gives you more flexibility. If you need a little bit more at the start of the quarter and then a little bit less later, you have the flexibility to do that. So that is a good thing. But sometimes it's a little bit trickier to sort of think about 3 months and making sure that you don't overspend. Because one of the other big changes with support at home is that all spend within a quarter must be claimed within the quarter. So previously we had a little bit of flexibility, and if you did, maybe you spent a little bit over in a month, we would just claim it in the next month. We're unable to do that now. So all of a quarter's spending must be captured in that quarter. And if you do spend over your quarterly budget, then unfortunately, you are required to then personally pay for that overspend. So it does mean that having a good eye of where your budget and your spends at is really important. And we'll talk a bit more in a moment about the portal and how that can help you with that. So dedicated equipment funding. So new funding's available through the Assistive Tech and Home Modification Scheme, and that's really designed to allow participants, clients, to access equipment funding more readily. So in the past, you used to have to save in order to purchase pieces of equipment. Now that funding can be applied for and is over and above what you receive for your ongoing services. So it's really recognising that you shouldn't need to compromise your services in order to purchase equipment. So I think that is a good thing. And then pricing transparency. So there's, now capped, there's capped care management, and there is theoretically, capped pricing coming into play the middle of this year. But again, I think they've got quite a few things they need to fix with the current system. So I'm doubtful that will come into play, but we'll wait and see. So in terms of the classifications, as I said, it starts at around that 10,000 and now all the way up to 78,000. The quarterly budgets, the way that your quarterly budget works is that it's the full annual subsidy divided by 4. That is your quarterly budget. The way that we will represent that, on the portal is your quarterly budget minus the deduction from the government, which is the 10% care management. So in the portal, what you will see is what is available for you to spend. Now we're not moving to the next slide. Oh, there we go. As I said, one of the changes with support at home is just how fees operate. So care management is now a 10% deduction that the government take out of every single support at home participant's budget. And that is a pool that providers can then claim from in order to, for the services that we deliver, supporting you with the care planning, reviewing your budget, reviewing your plan, making changes based on needs, all of that, education, all those things fall into care management. So we have to actually claim for those funds. Oh, the slides are not moving. Thank you, Belinda. Goodness, that's a small problem, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to, do you know what? I think it's because I'm flipping to let people come back in. Let me stop sharing and then I'll share again. Sorry about that. And thank you, Belinda. Okay. Now, hopefully you can see a different slide. And hopefully now if I keep going and if we don't have any extra latecomers, we should be fine. So thank you, Belinda. The other big change is package management. So anyone who was in the system before would remember that we charged package management, and that is for, all the other costs outside of care management. So it's for our, compliance, claiming, invoice payments, it's for registering workers, managing their compliance, all those things. Now, what the government require under support at home is that there is no standalone fees, that all of the costs outside of care management are incorporated into the hourly rate. So for fully managed providers, that means that hourly rates have gone up from sort of $80 an hour to, $110, $120 an hour. And I'm going to have to switch that back again. If it doesn't change when I move to the next slide, let me know, because the same problem might have just occurred as I let someone else in. So the hourly rates have increased significantly with fully managed, because those costs are now incorporated into the hourly rates. And then for self-managed providers like Dulcie, because obviously we don't control the hourly rates, you do, the 10%, it's being called an admin fee, but really it is incorporating those costs, those business costs to manage your funding into the hourly rate. That's the way that we do that. The other two big changes are just around unspent funds. So with unspent funds, if you had funds under the home care package program, those unspent funds rolled forward into supported home. They are accessible. They are never being taken away from you, but there's some different rules about how they are spent. So if you are purchasing any equipment or home modifications, the government require that unspent funds from the home care package program are used first before we apply for additional funding through the ATHM scheme. For any services, you would use your quarterly budget first. And then if you use up all of your quarterly budget and you still need additional services, you would be able to start using the home care package unspent funds. So then moving forward, under supported home, the maximum amount that can be rolled over is $1,000 or 10% of your quarterly budget. So it's really not, the rollover it's not a savings plan anymore. It's not a save for future. It is really a small buffer, so that if anything changes for you during a particular quarter, you've got a little bit of wiggle room if you need it. Now, did that change or not? Can someone give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down? It did. Oh, great. Okay, good. Thanks, Belinda. So in terms of service categories, now service categories are really important for anyone who is paying contributions. So anyone who is transitional or new to the supported home program does need to make a contribution. And the contributions are obviously based on income and assets, but they're also based on services. So clinical services, such as nursing and allied health, so physiotherapy, occupational therapy, podiatry, all those really important services that actually do make a massive difference to keeping you at home, are 100% funded by the government. So regardless of your income, no one needs to contribute to clinical services. So that's a great thing. The next category is independence. So independent service includes personal care, social support, respite, transport, and contributions do apply for those services. Now, I think there's still a lot of debate around personal care, and there's a very strong view from providers and I think clients alike that personal care should sit in clinical services. Now, the department have said they're reviewing lots of things, and that's one of the things they're reviewing. But at this stage, there is still a contribution on personal care. But, no one chooses to have someone shower them. So I think it's really reasonable that sits in clinical services. And there is absolutely risk that people choose not to have that essential service due to the contributions. Everyday living services, they are the things that have the highest contribution rate. They're the services that you would have had all your life: cleaning, gardening, well, you would have done them yourself probably, home maintenance and meals. So they attract the largest contribution. So what do those contributions look like for those who actually need to contribute? So if you are a full pensioner, obviously clinical is 0%, no contribution. Independence, so the personal care, sorry, I'm just letting someone in. Personal care, as I said, respite, transport attracts a 5% contribution. So if the service was $100, you would contribute 5, and then everyday living is 17.5. So if the service was $100, you would pay $17.50 for someone to clean your house, for example. If you are a self-funded retiree, those percentages are significantly greater. So again, still 0% for clinical supports. For independence, it's 50%. And for everyday living, it's 80%. So I think people look at that in two different ways. One, they say, oh my gosh, it's not worth it. And others say, do you know what? I need those supports. And so actually, if I get 50% back, that is better than me paying 100%. So if I really need showering or I really need respite, I'd rather be, getting 50% back from the government. And then people who are part pensioners are somewhere in between. And everybody receives an individual assessment of what their contribution is. And of course, those that are grandfathered, if you never paid an income tested fee before under the old program, then you are 0 for all. If you did pay an income tested fee, then the percentages that you contribute are considerably lower than these percentages, and they are capped such that you would never pay more than what you did under the old program for an income tested fee. Most people who were paying an income tested fee are better off under the new system. So that's a good thing. Contributions are significantly less. In terms of the contributions that we need to collect, they're less than what we did under the old program, and we've got more people contributing. So those with ITFs are paying considerably less under the new system. Now, just can everyone confirm, or someone confirm, that the slide did change? Because I let someone in and that does upset the slides. But hopefully that's changed. So the next slide is talking about the ATHM. So with the ATHM scheme, there's two parts to that scheme, and you can access both. So there is a considerable amount of additional funds available for people, which is great. So assistive technology, that's their nice word for equipment, is you can access up to $15,000. Now, you can actually get extended funding for assistive tech if you've got all of the documentation that says that you really need that. So that's great, because that's on top of your services. Now, it's immediate funding. Now, it's not really immediate because we have to apply for that funding. What we have seen to date, and the system's about to change, from the 1st of November up until last week, we were able to apply for ATHM funding through what was sort of referred to as a speed pathway. We had to update a spreadsheet and send them some stuff. We were pretty much getting approvals in 2 weeks, around 2 weeks, sometimes a little bit more. Now, from this week, we need to go through the normal process, which is where you request for a reassessment. So you request a reassessment, and specifically for assistive technology. So it's a little bit of an unknown as to how quickly they do those assessments. But the intent of the program, the ATHM, is that you have really quite fast access to that essential equipment that you need. So I'm still hopeful that those assessments happen relatively quickly, but it's to be seen. But in order for us to apply for any additional funding, assistive tech or home modifications, we are required we need an OT assessment, we need a trial of the equipment, and we need quotes, and then we load that up for them to do that assessment. Now, if you are a grandfathered participant and accessing this funding, there are no co-contributions. If you are not a grandfathered participant, then you will make a contribution at the independence rate. So it would be 5% if you're a full pensioner. Home modifications are a little bit the same and a little bit different. So $15,000. However, the difference between home mods and assistive tech is, as I said, assistive tech, you can actually access more funding on top of it can be more than 15,000 if you have the assessed needs and the right documentation. With home modifications, it's a hard cap. It is $15,000. And the rationale for that is that anything exceeding $15,000 is possibly making capital, improvements to the home, increasing the value of the home. And so the department's view is that they will not pay over and above the $15,000. So it's then a shared cost if it's above that amount. So it covers things like rails, minor bathroom modifications, outdoor rails so that you can have safe access, things like that. We would require the OT assessment. We would require where there's, if there was some modifications of the bathroom, we would actually require the drawings from the OT, exactly what needs to occur. And then again, we would load that up to get that approval. And exactly the same as the assistive tech, grandfathered participants will not be required to contribute. However, if you are transitional or new, you'll contribute at the independence rate. The other little sort of sneaky thing to let everyone know, there's the $15,000, but very strangely, you could apply for the $15,000, use that all up, and then because there's three tiers. So there is another tier that's $2,000. So once you've used your $15,000, you could use the $2,000 tier as well. So in actual fact, you could get $17,000. So that's just a little extra that you can use down the track. And then in addition to those funding schemes, we also have short-term restorative care. That's really intended for a short burst of intensive clinical supports, predominantly allied health. So it might be that you've had a little time in hospital and you need some intensive physiotherapy and some hydrotherapy to just build back your strength so that you can be really safe and mobile at home. So we would assist in applying for that. The difference with restorative care as compared to some of the others is that there is a fixed number of restorative care packages available. So you may or may not be successful depending on what's available at the time. But we would certainly support anyone who needed that funding. And then end of life care is $25,000 if your prognosis is 3 months or less. Now, we have had some applications for the end of life care, and I must say they've been extremely quick. So, we just need the right documentation. So, we need from a gerontologist or the prognosis information. But we've seen those turned around in a couple of days, which is what you really should happen. And that funding is then available for up to 16 weeks. Now, the important thing to know about that is it's not $25,000 on top of your existing funding. It replaces your existing funding for the period that you're utilising that. Now, the other side of that that's not so good is if the prognosis was 3 months or less, but in actual fact, it turns out to be longer than that, you would roll back to your standard funding level, which is hopefully classification 8. If it wasn't, then we would be assisting to get that increased. Okay, so some questions. One question, which is a really important one, is will participants pay contributions when using their unspent funds? So regardless of what your participation, whatever your contribution rates are, if you are using unspent funds from the home care package, then you will not pay a contribution. So that's good news. If you were purchasing something, so let's say we're purchasing a piece of equipment, it's a scooter and it costs $8,000 and you've got $6,000 of unspent funds, we would apply for the ATHM funding. 6,000 would come out of your unspent funds. You would pay no contribution on that. The remaining 2,000 would come from ATHM funds, and you would pay the applicable independence contribution. So whatever your personal contribution rate is. Hopefully that makes sense. So some other questions that we are being asked. How are my contributions calculated? So Dulcie does not calculate the contributions. This is Services Australia. So Services Australia calculate the contributions based on income and assets. And then, of course, as I said, the percentage that you are required to contribute is dependent on the service. So the Services Australia will send you a letter notifying you of your contributions. And then our systems are now connected to Services Australia. So they pass that information straight through to us so that we know what your contributions are. Now, Services Australia will, they will reassess on a quarterly basis. So if something about your income and assets changes in the quarter, then your contributions could also change. They would notify you with a letter, they would update the system, it would flow through to us. So, any communication we have regarding your contributions, it's just whatever they tell us those contributions are. In terms of how and when you will pay those contributions, all clients need to be signed up for Go Cardless. That's how we collect those contributions. So that's the direct debit service, a very secure direct debit service. And those contributions are advised to us after we do the monthly claim. So obviously it's quarterly budgets, but we're still claiming monthly to Services Australia. So for January, for example, we have just claimed for January, and they have actually sent us the finalisation documentation. And in that, it tells us exactly what the contributions are for each and every service. That is then pushed through to your statement that you receive. So you can see for my gardening, it was $100 gardening and I am paying $17.50. So you'll see that itemised per transaction on the statement. And then we will send out an invoice. Generally, it'll be, in the middle to late of the following month. And that will be the amount, the total that is due. And 5 days later, we will take that money through Go Cardless. So, the first notification is through your statement, then you'll get your invoice, then we'll actually take that money. So, as I say, it'll be based on the percentage that the department notify us. So because our December claim was obviously delayed, and then the department took a very long time to process claims for the end of the first quarter, we are literally just about to notify everyone of the December contributions. And then January statements will be coming out next week. We will then notify you of your January contribution. But generally the rhythm will be that, we will claim at the beginning of the month, statements will come out by the middle of the month, the invoice will come out soon after your statement, and we'll be looking to take the money by the end of the month. That's kind of the rhythm. Okay, so equipment, as I said, no longer funded through your quarterly budget. So, even small things. So it's, even small things that you might think, oh, I just need these, precious socks, Dima socks, and they only cost $50. Can they come out of my quarterly budget because I haven't spent it all? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Those expenses do need to come out of ATHM funding. So we would, if you haven't already got ATHM funding, unspent funds, we would apply for that for you. So I'm just going to admit someone. We will apply for that funding, and even those small purchases need to come out of that funding. As I said, it should take, a couple of weeks. The one thing that's quite tricky and crazy is that we put that in for you. The department don't actually notify us when it's been approved. So if you receive a letter telling you that it's approved, then let us know. We are keeping an eye, obviously, out for those that we've applied for, but they don't give us any formal notification. So as soon as we're aware of it, we'll obviously let you know, and then you can make those purchases. But in terms of equipment purchases, they can't happen until the funding has actually been allocated. How long does it take to apply? Sorry, just letting someone else in. In terms of how long it takes to apply for ATHM funding, we do require that documentation. So we do require the OT assessment. We do require that the equipment's been trialed, and we do require the quote. So that part's a little bit dependent on you and how quickly you can get those things organised. As soon as we've got the documentation, we can load that up and put in the request for the reassessment. And then, as I say, we're expecting that'll take 2 to 4 weeks before we get notification that funds is available. So if you are thinking about or know that you are going to need some equipment in the not too distant future, then I would really recommend just getting onto that sooner rather than later, because it does take a little bit of time. So unspent funds, will I lose my home care package unspent funds? No, they are never taking those funds back, but they will use them first, as I said, for equipment and home modifications, and they will use them last for services. So if you use all of your quarterly budget, then you can use your unspent funds, but otherwise it'll just continue to sit there. So it's good to have a think about how you might like to use those funds. Now, in terms of the rollover funds, that is, again, one of these crazy great ideas, but that don't work very well, in my opinion. So the way the rollover funds work, it's $1,000 or 10% of your quarterly budget. However, in terms of when you will see that and when you will know exactly how much you've got, they don't finalise the end of quarter until 60 days after the end of, and when I say they, I mean the department, they don't finalise until 60 days. So actually the amount that you would have as rollover is not available until 61 days after the end of the quarter. So basically, when you think about, we've finished one quarter, it ended in December, we've had January, we've finished February, and that's going to be approximately 60 days. And then in March is when it's going to be available. So what I've been saying to the team and what I say to you is, don't budget for your rollover funds, because we won't know how much they are. They're not going to be available until the last month. They are really intended for those I need a little bit more, those unexpected expenses that might push you just a little bit over your budget, and rather than having to pay personally, it'll be able to come out of your rollover funds. So the team, your support partner, will set up your budget based on your quarterly allocated funds. They will not include rollover funds, because one, when they're doing the budget at the start of the quarter, they won't know exactly what that is, and two, it's not going to be available until like the last month of the quarter. But the nice thing is, if you weren't spending all of your funds, it just does give you a little bit of wiggle room at the end of the quarter. So hopefully it will assist, it'll ensure that people don't actually inadvertently go over their budget, because we never like it when we have to say, oh my gosh, you've actually spent more than your budget and now we need to invoice or, take that money through Go Cardless. So it should help with that, but it is just that extra little bit of buffer is really what it is. So the 10%, I think lots of people ask questions about the 10% and why do you have to pay 10%, and does it really cost you 10% to process my invoice, and you know. So that is it's a really good question, and I've answered this question to many clients who ask, and it's a tricky one. So as I said, the 10%, it doesn't, does it cost 10% for every invoice? No, it doesn't. But the way that the government want us to charge for the costs outside of care management that support you to manage your funding, they want that to be incorporated into the hourly rate. And so it's like when you buy a piece of clothing from a store, and you buy a pair of jeans, and you buy your pair of jeans for $150. Now, the store probably bought those jeans for $50 or $75, but they sell them at $150, and they sell them at $150 because in that price, they need to incorporate the cost of the rent for the store. They need to incorporate the cost of the person who's working in the store. They need to incorporate insurance, all those things. So that is what the government want us to do. They want us to incorporate all our costs into the hourly rate. And of course, because your hourly rates are determined by you, the only way that we can incorporate our costs that allow us to support you in a really personalised way is that it gets incorporated into the hourly rate. So, admin fee is not the right word. And because it's actually applied to invoices, people do say, well, it doesn't cost that much to process an invoice. And it doesn't cost that much to process an invoice. It's not an invoice processing fee. It is the costs outside of care management that it costs to support you. And the way the government want those costs to be charged is through the hourly rate. So that is why and how. And to be really frank, compared to the old system where we charged 18%, the new system, we overall, we receive less income, to fund running the business than what we did under the old system. So some people say, oh, now you're taking 20%, but it's not 20% because not everyone uses all of their funds. Some people use, small amounts of their funds. Some people use, all of their funds. The other thing, which is just, an interest factor to share with you, is that, that 10% care management, we don't just get given that either. We are required to claim based on time spent. So it's like being a lawyer. Every minute needs to be accounted for, and then we claim for it. And if we don't claim for the whole lot, we don't get it, and you don't get it back. And the other really interesting thing is that we don't get any care management for anyone who starts in the quarter. So if we had 50 clients that start in the quarter, we get no care management for any of them for that first 3 months. And it's not like they give it to us the next month in arrears. We never get it. So there's lots of things that make it tricky. And that's why we have to charge the 10% on invoices to kind of cover all of those things. The other thing that some people ask about is, why is the 10% admin fee not split out on my statement so that I can see it? And the reason for that is, again, because the government are saying that there are no additional fees, and that the 10% is to be incorporated. Our costs are to be incorporated into the hourly rate. So then what you see is the total hourly rate, which includes our 10%. And so it's the same, like if you were with a fully managed provider, and they're charging you $120, they're not splitting out of that $120, $20 of this is for, the cost of the business. They're not splitting that out. So that's how the government want us to, that's how they want us to price. And so that's why it's not split out on the statement. Hopefully that makes sense. The last questions were just about the portal, and then I'll open to everyone's questions. So we've just rolled out the portal. We had quite a few clients who were sort of in a test phase, and now we've rolled it out more broadly. So hopefully all of you have managed to, log into the portal. Now, the reason that we've developed the portal is because Lookout, which is what we've always used, that was our client portal. With Supported Home, Lookout no longer provide a live feed of the transactions. And we know that that's really important. And we know that if you, in order for you to manage your budget, make sure you don't overspend, that having that visibility is really important. So because Lookout took that away, without telling us, mind you, we then went to develop our own portal so that we could provide that information to you. So at the moment, our own portal is really trying to replace what you've lost from Lookout. So it is showing you, here's what your quarterly budget is, here's how much you've spent quarter to date, here's how much is left of your ongoing budget only quarter to date, and here's all the transactions. So as soon as we pay an invoice, it pushes through to the portal and you should be able to see all of those transactions. So it gives you a good ability to keep an eye on things. Now, one of the things, interestingly, that didn't get picked up in the trial, but has since been picked up and we're fixing, is that because it's pulling all the transactions from Lookout, if you've got an ATHM transaction, it's actually pulling in, so you can see it, which that's great, but it's also adding up and it's taking that from your balance. So it means that when it's saying, here's your quarterly budget, here's your spend, well, your spend is actually possibly including spend that needs to come out of ATHM. So that's being pulled out as we speak. And then what we're going to do is down below, we'll actually just have the transactions that are ATHM. Now, those ATHM transactions could be coming out of your unspent funds if you've got unspent funds, or could be coming out of ATHM if you've got that funding. But it'll just list those transactions separately. So I'm sorry that there's that little bit of incorrectness at the moment, but that is literally, we're aware of it and we're fixing it. But the great thing about us having our own portal is that, we've had lots of feedback from clients about different things they'd like to see. And because we own it now, we can make those, we can progressively evolve the information that we share. When it was with Lookout, we can ask for things, but we may or may not get them. So that's good news. So we do intend to continue to evolve what you can see in the portal, the functionality. And then that other question is, should I still use Lookout or should I just use the Dulcie portal? So the only sort of value left in Lookout, to be honest, is that you can see your historic statements. We do email them to you. So if you're happy to find them in your emails, you don't need to go into Lookout. But if you want to go into Lookout because you find it easy to find a statement, then I'd say do that. The other thing that's in Lookout is your help plan, your live help plan. Now, again, we send that to you. But if you find it easier to just pop into Lookout and grab your help plan, then I'd encourage you to do that. So at the moment, we are going to, like with new clients, we will actually give them access to both. But with time, we'll probably switch off Lookout and move all of that capability into our own portal. So, yeah. Now, I think that is the last. Yes, that's the last of the questions. So I'm going to switch off the sharing. And then come back to you all. And if you've got questions, fire away. And it's so nice to actually be able to see some faces, because when I'm presenting, I can't see any faces, but now I can see lots of you, which is so lovely. Any questions, fire away. I can see there might have been a couple of questions that people wrote during. So let me grab those first. Yes. Are the rollover funds $1,000 or 10% of the quarterly budget? Yes, good question. So the question was, thanks, Peter, is it 10% of the quarterly budget, whichever's higher or lower than $1,000? It's actually the higher. So if you've got a higher level of funding, 10% of your quarterly budget is actually more than $1,000. If you're on a level 2, for example, the 10% will actually be will be lower than 1,000. So you would roll over 1,000. If you were on a level 4, 10% of your quarterly budget is about 1,400. So if you hadn't spent all of your funds and you still had that much left, 1,400 approximately would roll over as opposed to the 1,000. So it's the higher of the two. So good question. Thanks, Peter. Any other questions? You're welcome to use the hand up at the bottom, or you can just sing out. I don't mind. Alan, how are you? I can't hear you, Alan. I'm not sure if your volume or your mute or something, but unfortunately I can't hear you. Oh, I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. I don't know. Can anyone else hear Alan? It's not just me. No, no one can hear you. Oh, while I try and figure that out, Alan, I'm going to take a question from Narita. Hi, Narita. How are you? Oh, no, I can't hear you either. You're on mute, though, Narita. I can see you're on mute. So if you can turn off your mute.
Unmute. There we are.
There you go.
I've managed to unmute. I haven't got my Dulcie portal yet. I don't. The only thing I can see is historical stuff, and I think that's the lookout.
Yeah. So you should have received over the last, like sort of at the end of last week and the beginning of this week, we've been progressively sending out the welcome email. So let me see. I can just get it resent or see what's happened with yours, Narita. But the welcome email. Ooh, who said that? Did Joe say that as well?
Yeah, I said that. I haven't received Mum's either.
Okay, let me check on those two. So basically what you'll receive, it's a letter, an email that says, welcome to the new Dulcie portal. And there's a link that's to reset your password. So we've already registered all of our clients into the portal. And then you get a reset link. So you click on that and it'll allow you to reset a password or set up a password, really. It also explains to you that it'll give you your member number, and then you can use your member number to log in. And then once you've reset your password, there's another link. Click on that and that'll take you in. And then that's the one that you need to bookmark so that you can go back in whenever you need to.
Yeah, so definitely haven't received that. So I received an email saying something would come out, and then email about this meeting, but that's all I've received.
Okay, I'll get that checked straight after this meeting. The other thing to let you know, just so when you get there, you can actually see last quarter. So you can actually go back and see last quarter, and you can see this quarter. Last quarter, nothing's being added, but this quarter, obviously, as you've got more transactions that happen over the rest of the quarter, they'll just get added as we pay them. So the important thing, which is pretty obvious, but just to make it clear, you will only see invoices that are paid. So if you've had a service, if you think, I've had my physio, why can't I see my physio? Well, if the physio hasn't sent us the invoice, then it won't be there. It's only once we pay the invoices that you can actually see them there. Now, Alan, how did you go? Oh, no problems. Have you got that working? No. You know what, Alan, if you can't get your sound working, you could potentially just in the little chat box down the bottom, you can write your question and I'll answer it. Me. Is it me? Hi, me. You're muted as well. If you just turn that off so I can hear you. Can you see down the bottom, the little microphone? You just need to click on the microphone so that you're not muted. I'm not sure if I can do it for you. Let me just check. I might be able to turn your mute off. Let me try. No, it won't let me. So you just need to, down the bottom where the microphone is, if you just click on the microphone, it'll unmute you.
She might be in a different page. Yeah.
It won't work. Do you want to type your question into the chat? And while you're doing that, I'll just answer Larie's question. So in terms of the no worse off principle, which was something that was, obviously heavily talked about when we're transitioning from home care packages to support at home. So the no worse off principle applies to the contribution that you make. So that's the personal contribution. So if you had, under home care packages, if you had an income tested fee, now I'm just going to use round numbers. If you were paying $1,000 a month in an income tested fee, under the new program Support at Home, you will not pay more than what you paid in the past, so not more than $1,000. So the no worse off is about your personal contribution. It doesn't mean that you don't pay, that the 10% admin fee is not deducted, or that you don't pay the 10% on the hourly rates. It really just applies to your personal contribution that is capped. You can't get that off, unfortunately. Oh dear, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I need to see how I can set it up so I can turn you on. Can you type a message, or you can't see the message box at the bottom? I'm sorry. Do you know what? If you want to send a question through to your support partner, and we can definitely answer it. I'm sorry. So the question, thanks, Peter. Once you receive the service invoice, how long after will Dulcie pay the invoice? So I'm assuming that you mean when we receive an invoice from a third party. So our invoices are paid in 3 days, basically. So we pay invoices on a Wednesday and a Friday. And so if we receive the invoice, like if we received it on Thursday night, it'll be paid probably on Wednesday, to be honest. If we receive it on Friday morning, it'll definitely be the following Wednesday. If we received it on Wednesday, it'll get paid Friday. So 3 days is basically our payment schedule. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, please.
Joe. Yes, Joe, fire away.
So mum is not grandfathered, so we contribute now to her care. What I thought I heard you say is, if mum needs in the future, we've got most equipment, say if she needs a new walker or a new wheelchair, are you saying now we need to get an OT in? Can it be a nurse, or does it have to specifically be an OT? Okay. And you're saying now that if we bought a wheelchair for $1,400, mum has to pay 10% of that now?
She would have to pay whatever her independence contribution rate is, yes. So if her contribution rate is...
So she's full pension? She's full
pension?
She's
a full pension, so she'll pay 5%, yes.
So of the wheelchair?
That's correct, yes.
Of the OT cost of coming here too?
No. So that's a very good question. So the OT, because the occupational therapist is a clinical service, it doesn't matter whether it comes out of ATHM or out of your ongoing funding. It's 100% funded by the government, no contribution. But the piece of equipment itself will incur whatever your percentage is for independence.
And will that be the same if we have to get mum's shower modded? Does she have to pay 5% of the overall? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, me. I think you've got it off.
Hi, Kylie. How are you?
Hi. Good.
I wanted to ask you, with the for my mum, when she gets invoiced, and you go onto the portal to see where who's invoicing her, and for the amounts, you can't actually see the invoices themselves. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. You can't actually see the invoice. You can just see the transaction. One of the things we're working on, so I'll tell you, a while ago, when people would upload the invoice, we had quite a few fields that the worker, contractor, physio, whoever, had to complete, which included client name, client email address. And what we did with the client email address was that we actually sent the invoice via email to the client. And so then the client could say, oh, don't pay that invoice because actually they didn't turn up. However, we got a lot of feedback that it was too complicated when putting in invoices, and everybody was saying we want less fields. So we reduced the fields, and that's what sort of got traded off, is that no longer gets sent to you. But we are, at the same time as we've built the client portal, we're also just building a new invoice engine. And one of the things that one of the requirements that we've built in is that when the invoice comes in, it automates an email to you with the invoice attached so that you can actually see the invoice.
Beautiful. Yeah,
I know
because
that is something that people would like to see.
Yeah, because like we had a gardener and he quoted a really good price, and then when he actually started to do the work, it turned out to be something else. So without seeing what's on the invoice, it's hard to know how they're charging it. So it makes it difficult to manage.
Yeah. No, I hear you. What I would recommend is that you ask them to email the invoice to you before they submit it, because then you can actually review it. And if you've got any concerns, you can actually deal with that before they submit it for payment. But it's something that we're looking to fix. So I think, look, it's probably going to take a couple of months, to be honest, but with the new invoice system, that we will actually enable it to send you the invoice at the same time that it's submitted.
Fantastic. That's great. And can I ask you one more thing? If we want, if for example, we want to use, or whoever it is, someone to come and provide services for mum, and they invoice us and we pay them, and then to get reimbursed, do they have to have all the qualifications as if they were going through you and invoicing Dulcie?
Yeah, it's exactly the same, because the reason why they need all those verifications is that the government are saying we only want to pay for services that we know are being delivered by appropriately qualified people. We don't want to pay for, I use this is extreme, right? But, we don't want to pay for a criminal, for example. That's not going to be good use of government money. So that is why they require us to have, all of those verifications in place. And regardless of whether you're getting reimbursement or whether they're invoicing us directly, we can only pay when we know that the workers are suitable. Yeah.
Minimum Cert 3, isn't it?
It's a minimum Cert 3 if they're delivering personal care. Okay. So if they're just doing domestic assistance, like cleaning the house, that's they don't need Cert 3. But if they were doing any personal care, like showering or dressing, anything where you're physically in contact with the person that's receiving the support, they need to have Cert 3. Yeah.
And all else, police check.
Thank you.
And police check, exactly. Yes, no problems. Erica.
So I want to ask a question about reassessment. So I've got my mother to be reassessed. And now if the algorithm decides to reject the reassessment, how soon can I reapply?
Oh, it's a good question. I think the system actually blocks for 6 months. But that being said, I mean, we can ring them and say, we can ring them and ask them to remove the block if there's, there's a good reason. So we have definitely done that before, where we've said you have to remove the block so that we can put this in. So there's still ways around it, but the block's there for 6 months.
And related question, the reassessment, if she gets the higher level, which I'm assuming she will because she's had a major deterioration, how soon after the reassessment do we get the increased funds?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first she needs to be reassessed. So that takes some time because they don't have enough assessors. So first she'll be reassessed, and then it depends on how she's classified. So I think there's 5 classifications of urgency now. So depending on the urgency will determine how quickly she gets the funds. Now, we've definitely seen people get reassessed and get funds really quickly. So if there's urgent need, they actually do allocate the funds really quite quickly. If it's not so urgent, it can take some time. So it really just depends on the urgency class.
What some time is that? 3 months, 6 months?
Oh, it can take 3 to 6 months. It's
okay. Yep.
So in other words, make sure that I very clearly tell them, because they'll only talk to me, they won't talk to my mum, or they might talk to my mum, issues, and the fact that I'm not going to be here for a while.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay. Yeah, so just, make sure that it's really clear, that it's really urgent, and then you should be able to hopefully get the funds more quickly. Yeah.
Thank you.
So with the upgrade in ongoing funds, you know how I said ATHM, they don't tell us? They absolutely do tell us when your ongoing funds increase. So we get an email to say, funds have gone from this to this. You'll get an email, you'll get a letter. So that's something then, you would meet with the support partner, and you can then, create the new budget based on the new funds available. Jude.
Hi. Excuse the way I speak. I've got a progressive neurological cerebellar genetic ataxia. So I have a level 4 transitioned HCP package. I've got a bathroom. I just got that in. But next, and because I'm stage 4, I can't walk unaided. So I need to use walkers inside and outside. But I'm moving towards stage 5 quickly. It doesn't happen one day you're stage 4 and then the next day you're stage 5. Stage 6 is bedridden, and I won't tell you the next one. But then, so have I got this right? Because I'm looking at it for what I did for the bathroom. So I got the OT to do, I'll get the OT to do my assessment for the wheelchair. And then I will also, because I live in an apartment, I will also need to get a fire door so it opens automatically, and the fire service puts that in. I know this because they do this for NDIS clients and things with MS. So, so would I get that done at the same time, because I won't be able to use the wheelchair to go out if I don't have the fire door? So one would be home mod, and the other one would be assistive technology. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So we commonly apply for both at the same time, and they will absolutely approve both. I mean, we've had clients who have received high home mods, which is the full 15,000, and high AT, so 15,000 of equipment. So you can most definitely get both at the same time. And as I said earlier, the good news is on the equipment side, if you are, as you progress, needing further equipment, you will be able to get more than the 15,000.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Now, there's one last question that I will answer. I will need a wheelchair soon. Oh, this is your question, Jude. Okay, I've answered your question. Great. And the question from as well, the actual charge for the AT wheelchair, 10% plus 5%. So I think what you're asking, Peter, is do we still charge our 10%? Yes, we do. However, it is capped at $500. So if you bought, an example, $15,000 piece of equipment, we would charge $500. So that comes out of the funds. That's not a personal contribution. That's just part of the total cost of the purchase. But the 5% is what would be charged as your personal contribution to the piece of equipment that has been purchased. So you would be charged 5% on the total cost of the equipment. The total cost would incorporate our fee. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Me, did you have another question, or is your hand still up from before? It's still up. No problems. All good. All good. Great. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm glad to see so many faces. It's just so lovely because, you know, that's one of the downsides of self-management. We don't get to see our clients. So it's really lovely to see you. And hopefully that was really helpful. And obviously, if you've got other questions, just sing out. Your support partners are very well versed in all things support at home. So they'll also be able to answer your questions.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everyone.
Yeah,
Have a good day.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
presentation, Kylie. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.